Hello everybody, Richard here, and on March 9th there was another Apple event. They announced two things that we care about, the Apple Watch and the new Macbook. So the first thing we're going to talk about in this video are the three Apple Watches. You have the Sports Edition, number one. You have the Normal Edition, so it's the Apple Watch. And then you have the Apple Watch Edition. I'm not joking, it's called the Apple Watch Edition. So let's see, with the... So my first problem with the Apple Watch is its naming. Really? Sports? Normal? Edition? That's really confusing, Apple. Please fix that. What else? And, okay, so the big complaint here is that the Apple Watch Edition, so the one we have, actual gold and actual rose gold, costs from $10,000 for the gold version to $17,000 for the rose gold version. Now, a lot of people are complaining about this, and it is pretty expensive, but depends on the price range for a watch. If you're about to buy a Rolex for $20,000, then this is like right competing with the Rolex. And again, Apple wants to put their watch to compete with the Rolex. Is it a must buy? No, it starts at $350. Not a must buy smartwatch in my opinion. And I only have two problems with it. The price isn't the biggest issue for me. It's not the prettiest watch, and it has a square screen. And I'm not actually an iPhone user. I'm an Android user. So yeah, Apple Watch, you failed to really compel me to buy more into your ecosystem, other than the iMac and this iPad. So I don't know, Apple. Next time, maybe if you make a round Apple Watch. So the next thing that you guys may or may not want me to talk about is the new MacBook Air. Wait a minute. Give me a second. No, sorry, it's just called MacBook. So Apple has gone ahead and announced a brand new MacBook, a complete departure from the original MacBook, the plasticky one, for a kind of super MacBook Air, as in is thinner than a MacBook Air, nowhere near as thick as a MacBook Pro, but kills off everything specs from the MacBook Air. So Apple have gone ahead, they put one single USB Type-C port and an audio jack. So the USB Type-C port is used for charging and data and all that, which it's Apple, so they're going to charge for $35 adapters. And as I get onto the whole adapter thing, I'm going to look at the prices for adapters. So I'll be back in just a second. So I just had a look at the prices for the adapters that Apple is selling. To get USB Type-C, so if you don't know what USB Type-C is, it's a new version of USB. It's a much smaller, it's reversible, but it's a similar size to micro USB. So Apple are doing everything through this one port, so charging, data, video, etc. If you want to do any of that, you got to go through this. Now, to get an adapter to adapt from USB Type-C, to normal USB, you need to give Apple $30. $30 is the minimum amount of money you need to give Apple to get an adapter for this new MacBook from Apple. And they range all the way up to $119. That is fucking insane. Reason why I didn't want Apple to do a single port USB Type-C is because Apple are known to charge a lot of money for adapters. I've called them the king of adapters, and this is insane. The other week, going to go behind my computer, I bought this thing. This here is a Apple Thunderbolt to FireWire. So they're making me pay. So Apple, what they do is they're making me pay for something that they've removed. For example, they removed FireWire and have replaced it with Thunderbolt. So they made me pay to get FireWire back on my machine, back on this 27-inch iMac. So I don't know what Apple was thinking. If luckily in this case with Apple is that Apple, when it comes to FireWire and Thunderbolt, Apple's FireWire is owned by Apple, and they have licenses to this. So Apple's the only person who can make one of these things. But I'm hoping that because USB is generally open source to every manufacturer, I'm hoping to see much cheaper adapters for the MacBook. Because the ones that Apple are charging, ones that Apple are selling are certainly overpriced and are very, very expensive. And this is just typical Apple. Okay, so the next one we're going to talk about the new MacBook is it's fanless. So we're going to talk about the specs. Now, these are the real specs from Apple's website. I have them opened up on my iPad over here. Let me just take this cover off. Okay, these are the specs. Okay, I'm reading it. The specs are 8 gigs of RAM, so off to a pretty good start. Most laptops have this. A 256GB SSD, again, pretty solid. A 1.1 gigahertz processor. Let me repeat that, a 1.1 gigahertz processor. Okay, now you're probably thinking, if you don't know the price of this machine, it probably only costs about $1,000, maybe $1,300 knowing Apple. This machine in Australia cost 1,800 Australian dollars. What the actual fuck? That's expensive for a 1.1 gigahertz processor. And Apple, I don't know where the pricing scheme is coming from, but you can get a MacBook Air for much less with a much better processor, and you can get a MacBook Pro for about the same with a much better processor. That's bloody insane. Now, granted, it does have a good screen, it is really well designed, and it's super thin. So, really? But $1,800, Apple? That's a bit over the top for a machine with a 1.1 gigahertz processor, and sorry to say, but nothing's going to be fast with that processor inside of it. So, I don't know, Apple. You're going to have to rethink your pricing for listening to sell. And a little design change is that they've actually removed the glowy uppy Apple theme from like every other MacBook, which I don't know, I actually kind of like that design. So the next thing we will talk about is the internal layout and the battery design. So most of the inside of this computer is battery, and the motherboard is very small, according to Apple, which is good. And exterior design wise, it's only 12 millimeters thin. It's amazingly thin. This is probably a feat of engineering. Typical. Actually, I think I just quoted something from Apple. That's not a good thing. Okay, so I don't know. It's cool, but it's expensive, and honestly, it's not really worth that. So I mercifully bashed a MacBook, but at least it looks really nice. Let me look. And also the fan listing. Apple. Have you seen how the other MacBooks react when you crank their fans up? They are very loud and they get very hot. A lot of other MacBooks that I've used 3 or 4 MacBooks, right? I've used 3 MacBook Airs provided by school, and I've used 1 MacBook Pro. Every time you crank them up, every time you've done some processor intensive stuff, the fans spin up and they get very hot. So this machine with its 1.1 gigahertz processor better not get really, really hot like the other MacBooks. Okay, so that's the end of the MacBook bashing right now. I'm going to move on to the other stuff they announced in this new March 9th event. Okay, so the next announcement from Apple's event is the Apple TV took a price drop from $100 to $79 in the United States of America, so not Australia, which you kind of need one. It's $110 here. And they also had HBO announce their new streaming service, their standalone streaming service called HBO Now, which is, I don't know, basically standalone HBO Go. If you don't know what HBO Go is, it's for HBO. And they did a lot of premieres, like over here you can see a lot of HBO shows back up here on the Apple website. So, the HBO Now is coming exclusively to Apple TV, iPhone, and iPad, which is pretty good. And it's most likely going to come to Mac, like that one back over there, which is where I watch a lot of Netflix. So that's good. And they also updated things like the MacBook Pro, the MacBook Air, and yeah, so all the MacBook Pros and MacBook Airs had processor bumps. No new Mac Pro, no new iMac. We just had a new iMac, but no new Mac Pro, which is, I'm going to say that's going to be a WWDC thing. So yes. Yeah, and also another annoying thing is that the MacBook Pro is taking a bit of a price hike in Australia, but it's gotten some improved specs. So that has been all that was announced at the Apple March 9th event. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys see you in the next video. Goodbye.